G'day. Before we can start building software with Python and Tkinter, we need to make sure we've got our computers set up to program in. Let's get started. I like to use a code editor called Visual Studio Code. You can get it from code.visualstudio.com. Links in the description below. Download it for your operating system. It works on Windows, Mac, Linux, or use whatever editor you want. It doesn't matter. But in these videos, I'll be using VS Code. Once you've got that, you're going to want to make sure you've got version 3 of Python installed. You can download and install it from python.org. It'll work on most computers as well. Don't use version 2 though. That's an old version and won't work with these videos. If you're on Windows and you're installing Python, eventually you'll see this dialog. I like to check that box at the bottom in green, adding Python to the path. It can make life easier later on. Once you've got everything downloaded and installed, open up VS Code, and then the first thing I like to do here is install some extensions. You're going to want to search for and then install Python. Just click the install button over there. Python you need so you can write Python code in VS Code, so it'll help you out while you do it. And that'll probably also install things like Jupyter and maybe some of the other things as well. Indent rainbow is not bad too. It lets you highlight indents with different colors. And in Python, you have a lot of indents. So it can make your life a little bit easier when you're reading your code. Auto docstring, not bad. Helps you write documentation for functions and classes. That can be useful when you forget what you did. If you've got a little bit of documentation to read, makes your life easier. VS Code icons, all that does is change the icons that display in the software. It just makes things look a bit nicer. It's up to you. There's other ones you can get. And if you've never written any Tkinter code before in Python, you might want to use this one, Tkinter snippets. Just gives you a helping hand when you start writing your code. Once you've done that, you might want to change your theme. Click on the cog in the bottom left, go up to the color theme option, and you can choose from themes. This is the default light theme. If I use the up and down arrows, I can just switch through the themes and find the one that I like, whichever one it is. For the moment, I think I'll stick with just the light one for the moment. And you can set that file icon theme here as well by clicking on the cog. There's the VS Code icons. You'll see them later when we start opening files and folders, which is what we should do now. First thing you got to do when you're programming is generally open a folder. You want to keep your code and all your files in the one location so you're consistent and VS Code knows where everything is and can find it easier. So it's a good idea to put everything in one folder. So I'm going to click on the Explorer icon in the bar at the top left, or you can get it from the File menu, Open Folder. Click the button. Find a location where you want to save all your work. I'm going to put it in Documents, and I've got this folder here, My Project, which is just an empty folder. Create a new one if you need to, but make sure you remember where it is so you know exactly where everything that you create is saved on your computer. When you open the folder, it's just going to show you the name of the folder there. And it's a good idea not to have spaces in your names. Don't put spaces in file or folder names unless you really need to. Use an underscore or perhaps a dash. Underscore is probably the best. Once you've got that open, we don't need the Getting Started window. First thing we're going to do is we better do some stuff with Python. We're going to set up a virtual environment. The virtual environment is going to create an installation of Python in a folder inside our project. That way we can make sure it doesn't change and it stays consistent and we're in full control of everything. So to do that, we're going to click on the terminal menu. We're going to click a new terminal. This is Windows, so I've got a PowerShell terminal. On Mac, you might have a Bash terminal, whatever you've got configured on your computer. So the command for Windows is Python -m venv, and then whatever you want the virtual environment folder to be called. I'm going to call it snappy.snappytk. There we go, .snappytk. On Mac, the only difference is, and probably Linux too, the only difference is you type Python 3. You just have a 3 at the end of the word Python. Push enter, and eventually, takes a little bit of time, this will finish, but you'll notice you've got a folder up here with whatever name you type down here on the end of that command. So .snappytk. And it's finished now, so let's have a quick look at that folder. And this is an actual installation of Python that is called a virtual environment. And it's a good practice to do this when you're making software. It just keeps everything consistent, and it makes it easy to repeat on another computer if you need to, or for someone else if they're going to help you out building some software. So you can see it's just a standard version of Python. So I'm going to kill that shell now. And I can do that with the little trash icons. Kill the terminal. And then what we're going to do now is we're going to close that folder, and we're going to create a new file. So just click outside that folder so it's not highlighted in blue, not open. Just click outside and click on the new file button, or right click, choose new file, whichever you prefer. And we're just going to make this one called hello world.py. py because it's going to be a Python file. We're going to write a bit of test code and just make sure that our installation is going to work. Now, before we write any code, let's just go down the bottom right. And down the bottom right here, you might see 3, whatever your version of Python is. Mine's 3.10.6. And it might not have this bit in brackets after it. If you don't see the bit in brackets after it like mine has, you need to click on it. That's going to open the Select Interpreter drop-down. And here you're going to want to make sure you can see the virtual environment that we just created. So mine was called .snappytk. If you can't see it, you might need to click the refresh arrow up the top there. And if you still can't see it even after doing that, and I've sometimes seen this on Macs, you might need to close VS Code and open it again before it starts to show up. It can be a bit of a pain, but eventually you should start to see it. Once you can see the virtual environment listed, click on that, and then you should see it listing down the bottom right there, next to the number for Python version. That means we're going to be using our virtual environment when we run this code. So let's just finish off by printing out the standard hello world text. If I can type. There we go. So we've got the print command, some parentheses, some quotes, and then our text in between. That's just going to print us a message in a terminal. So let's run that code. You can either run it, Control F5, or click the play button up the top to run the Python file. I'm just going to do that. There's my shell. Might need to install that later. There's my shell. There's the message printed. The important thing here, though, is that you can see the virtual environments listed at the beginning of these lines. That tells me that I'm using my virtual environment. So that means I'm all set up, ready to go. If you got this far, good job. Thanks for watching. Make sure you try this out yourself. Don't just watch videos. You got to write the code. See you in the next one.